Hey, I'm Melissa.
And I'm Whitney.
We started this true crime podcast over a glass of wine and quickly turned from true crime listeners into true crime advocates.
So get comfy, pop a cork, and grab a glass because we have work to do.
This is Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. I know that we have been getting away from announcements lately, but we have a couple things we want to share with you. Don't forget about us being the January month of the True Crime Podcast calendar. You can get your, what's the code?
Cabernet is the code. If you're a true crime content person, this is your calendar for you.
Yep, you need it. So you can mark your calendar for December 3rd. We will be in Atlanta.
We will.
And we'll be there with 14 other podcasts, lots of our friends in the podcast industry doing a live show at Pinky's Up in Roswell, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. Come see us and all of our friends. You can get your tickets on eventbrite.com.
Perfect.
So come have a glass of wine with us at Pinky's Up. Do you have your wine for today?
I do. I am drinking Sister Snakes. It's got a very cool packaging. It is a 2021 Chenin Blanc from South Africa. It tastes like a Pinot Grigio. It's a dry white. It's really good. It's from my wine subscription from Wink that I actually just canceled because I forgot to order all my wine for literally 6 months.
So you're anticipating your second shipment, right?
So I got 2 huge boxes already, but there's a third coming. And I don't know why that one hasn't come yet. Total, I had 27 bottles of wine coming that I forgot to order over the last couple of months.
You're going to be stocked up for a while.
Yes, got the 27 bottles and then canceled my subscription so I can get through this. This will probably hopefully last me until March, my birthday. And then we'll just start it up again.
All right, so let's get into it.
I want to start off by saying I will be covering the unsolved murder of Sylvia Baker. However, we are going to be getting into a cult as well. It just so happens that Sylvia was connected to a religious organization just prior to her being murdered. And since we haven't really talked much about cults lately on Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet, I thought I would go ahead and give some information about this particular religion/cult. I couldn't find anything that they particularly did bad or wrong or sinister.
That feel like it was a cult? It's just more of a religion?
Yes. I would say a religion, a culture, a way of living. Of course, you have bad apples in every single denomination. I wouldn't call this religion a cult. However, other people call it a cult. So you can decide on that later on when we talk about it. Today's case is in the city of Hartford. It is the capital, actually, of Connecticut. And the population in 2020 was 121,000 people. Before researching, the only information about Hartford that I known was the fact that it was a fictional place on Gilmore Girls. Hartford is one of the oldest towns in all of America. It is also home to the oldest continuously run newspaper in the country. Another fun fact about Hartford, it was the richest city in America, literally for decades, and now it is one of the poorest. It was nicknamed the insurance capital of the world because of all the insurance companies that have their headquarters in this area. 28% of the city is under the poverty line, which is pretty high considering the whole United States is at about an 11.6 poverty rate. Hartford is a decently safe place to live. it does have a lower crime rate than many other cities its size. Regardless of crime and finances, Hartford has amazing history and is breathtakingly beautiful. Very historic. I just love looking at little places, little towns like this.
I imagine a lot of tree-lined streets.
And the old buildings that have been renovated but still hold the character from the early 1900s. That's just amazing. Sylvia Baker was a 28-year-old single mother in the summer of 1982. She was also a student at the Greater Hartford Community College, where she studied sociology and design. She was a hard worker. She was actually working 2 jobs at the time of her murder. One with a company called Hubling. It is a food and beverage company. She also worked part-time at the Hartford Public Library. She loved her children more than anything and was giving them the best life she could, up until the night of July 17th of 1982. This was a very normal evening for the family of 3. Inside the apartment on Sisson Avenue, there in Hartford, Sylvia's son named Kelsey, he was 8 years old, he was watching TV, and her daughter, Elena, who was just 2 years old, was sleeping. This was in the later evening hours. Sylvia tells her son that she's going to take the trash out to the apartment complex dumpsters, and she'd be right back. This is not out of the norm. Who else is going to take the trash out? She has a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old. She's the only one to take the trash out. When Sylvia didn't return as quickly as she normally would, Kelsey looked out the window to see if he could see her, and he did. He spotted his mom. She was talking to a group of people. Kelsey then assumed this was neighbors or her friends, didn't think much of it, and then he went back to watching his TV show. Now, sometimes, I'm sure you all know if you listen to us regularly, one thing gets in my brain, and I can't let it go until I tell you all about it. And this is another one of those things, that it's a random detail, but it sticks in my mind. Kelsey was watching The Love Boat. My last case I covered about in California was the Petty cabin murders. And I don't know if I mentioned it then, but the murder victims were also watching The Love Boat.
It was a very popular show at the time, but also
yes,
it's an interesting tidbit that is now traveling through your cases. So now next state, when you get to the Dakotas or whatever your next one will be, it's going to need a Love Boat component.
I will try. I'm going to try to stay away from the 80s because that is when both of these cases happened, and The Love Boat was probably the number one thing on television. But like you said, it was a very popular show. But the fact that it makes my skin crawl thinking about these people watching Love Boat and just being like a normal everyday, hey, it's 8 o'clock, let's turn on Love Boat. And then their lives literally changed forever. And that was probably their last memory before they went to sleep. It's something so minuscule, but it's also something 95% of us can relate to. If we're not on TikTok, it's, oh, what show do we watch before bed?
Yep.
Back to the timeline. Kelsey sees his mom talking to the people outside. He goes back to watching TV. Other neighbors, because she lived in an apartment complex, so there's people everywhere, they reported that they saw a blue van pull up. Multiple people were inside this van, but it looked as if Sylvia knew these people because she walked up to them and got in the van. Now, this is in the 80s. They have those vans that are more than for just driving around. It's almost like they have a hangout area, living space in the back of the van. Yeah. And it wouldn't be seats you're driving a van these days, but it would be almost like bench seats. Some would have rugs in there, TV, things that people could hang out.
Because seat belts weren't a priority then.
They were not at all. In all the reports that I read, Sylvia most likely had no intention of going anywhere with these people. But she was going to chat. If they were her friends or her neighbors or someone that she knew, get in the van, hang out a couple of minutes, chit chat with these people, and then go back. Everyone that knew her stated she would have never, ever left her children by themselves for more than a few minutes while she was taking the trash out or talking to a friend/neighbor on the porch. She would have never physically gotten to a car where she thought she would be leaving and leaving her 8-year-old and 2-year-old by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not what she would have done. She never comes back from getting inside that van.
Oh,
She's
no.
never seen again alive. But it is the next day at 2:55 p.m. found Sylvia's nude body in a local pond.
Oh.
Her wrists and ankles were bound, and she had a blindfold over her eyes. The autopsy would report that Sylvia had been strangled. She had bruises and scratches all over her body that showed she put up a fight. Now, this is strange, and you can take it for what it's worth. The knot that bound her wrist was tied differently than the knot that tied her ankles. So this led police to believe that more than one person was involved in Sylvia's murder. Because typically, someone, if they're going to be tying someone's hands, they'd be doing the same type of knot. This had 2 different knots.
Mm-hmm.
She had been in the water somewhere between 8 and 16 hours prior to finding her. Sylvia, of course, she is a normal human being. She was not perfect. None of us are. She was going through a breakup. She was learning how to be a single mother and to how to provide for her children. And like I said at the beginning of this, Sylvia had ties to a cult. And in the days after her body was found, many articles written about her death will include information about this cult/religion. It is called Rastafari. This is a religion's political movement started in Jamaica in the 1930s. They believe in a specific interpretation of the Bible. Their god is called Jah, and they believe that this God lives inside each person, the individual.
Okay.
There was an emperor of Ethiopia that the members of this religion believed was the second coming of Jesus, or Jah. It was heavily influenced by the Judeo-Christian religion. They also have a ritual of using marijuana. This is as bad as it gets, guys, so chill. All I can think about is Cool Runnings, the Jamaica movie where they wanted to be, what was that Olympic sport?
Bobsledding.
Bobsledding. That's all I think. Like, they're just chill people down in Jamaica living their lives.
And I think of a lot of music. You think, what is the
reggae
music that use the drums, the metal drums? That's all I can think of is like a lot of music.
Exactly. And that's what these people were about. There's no designated leader. And this was on purpose because they didn't want to become a replica of other religions and have their downfalls. Everything was designed for a reason, not to become other type of religions. Of course, there's been various crimes committed by Rastafari. There have been various crimes committed by Rastafari or like members being targeted. These crimes have included trafficking of pot. There was a report on the Rastafari movement in Kingston, Jamaica. They said that the general public believes in the stereotype of Rastafarians. They have beards, they avoid work, they steal, they smoke ganja, they're liable for sudden violence.
Never seen a pothead that is spontaneously violent.
No, they're just chill people. Yes, I understand nobody wants to go to work, and if you don't have to, don't.
Right? But you're not like walking down the street and suddenly break into a kung fu fight with the person standing next to you.
This is definitely the minority. Of course, there's going to be these people in every religion, every sector of environment, every culture that are violent. However, it doesn't mean Rastafarians are like that. After everything that came out about Sylvia and how she was getting involved with this religion, her family was very outspoken about this group of people. They stated that she found out something, or she became against the religion, the cult, as they called it, and that could be why they killed her. Literally, 5 out of every 6 articles written within a week of Sylvia's murder had something to do with a cult inside it. Now, based on all the research I did about this, they're just chill people. Only they had a few people that would go off the hinges. That's it. And that says more about that particular person than it does this religious culture. One representative of the group in that area at that time after Sylvia's murder stated, "We are peace-loving people. We don't use violence unless we have to defend ourselves." Which, when I first read that, I'm like, okay, what do they mean defend themselves? Because I'm always skeptical of everyone, obviously, in our line of work, that we have to be. But then the more that I researched this group of people, they're just chill. They believe what they believe, and they're not going to kill people for random reasons, for not agreeing with them. They just be like, okay, thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
This season on DNA ID, a couple shot at a campground, a realtor waylaid at a home showing, a bookstore owner stabbed among her volumes, a young soldier dumped in a parking lot. What do all these tragic cases have in common? They are all cold cases solved after decades of frustration and futility by forensic genealogy. I'm Jess Betancourt, and in Season 2 of DNA ID, I'll bring you 24 more fascinating cases in which the killer eluded generations of investigators until science and some crafty genealogists cracked them at long last. Listen to DNA ID on your favorite podcast platform. New episodes drop every other Monday.
Another lead that dried up quickly was the ex-boyfriends of Sylvia. Of course, they're going to look at anybody she was romantically involved with.
Because some say it's always the husband or the boyfriend.
Yes, especially the one she had just broken up with literally a month or 2 prior. All of them were brought in and interviewed without really anything coming from it. The one that she had just broken up with, he went on record to the press stating how emotional he was and how he could not believe something had happened to Sylvia. Even his mother came out to speak of how much her son was devastated by the news that Sylvia had been murdered.
I'm sure they just broke up. There's going to be some sort of emotion.
And I didn't find it anywhere, but he could be the father of the children. I don't know. I couldn't find, there's not a lot out there about Sylvia. She was a Black woman in the 80s in
there's
Connecticut.
Definitely no coverage of that.
Yes, I could only find one picture of Sylvia in everything, and that was in a news article. That is how much little coverage Sylvia got at the time. And we're going to talk about some other things that were not followed up on that really could break the case. Now, police know more than we do, but it just does not seem as if Sylvia's case was taken serious in the 80s. Nowadays, there is a detective that says he will figure out what happened to Sylvia. The man that was investigating Sylvia's death, his last name was Jacobson. He stated to get Sylvia's body naked and bound to the edge of this pond, it would be very difficult for one person to do in the middle of the night by themselves. So he believes that at least 2 people are involved, if not more. He said there weren't bruises or scrapes as if she was dragged through this area. The bruises and scrapes on her were more violent,
defensive wounds as opposed to drag marks or
exactly.
She scraped against a tree, something along those lines.
Exactly, because it's very dense terrain down to this pond, and he does believe they had to have carried her down there.
Okay.
One of those things that I thought was super weird, this guy's wallet was found while they were investigating. Very weird because this is not a highly trafficked area at all.
Sure. And yes, the chances there that it could be anyone that stopped there and not necessarily her murderer. But if they are looking for Sylvia, find the wallet, then find Sylvia, it's very suspicious.
Very suspicious. If we think about it, there's a trail that leads down to the water. So this is most likely the trail that the killer or killers took Sylvia down. So the man that lost his wallet, of course, police call him, hey, we found your wallet, bro. He states he had heard of her murder and wanted to check it out. And that is when he lost his wallet. Seems suspicious to me, but I'm like, okay, if he checks out.
And maybe he's just like us. Maybe he thought he was helping.
Exactly. In all of the articles that I read about this man that dropped his wallet, his name was never released, never mentioned, and apparently police barely spoke to him. The press never said anything about it. Not once. In all of the articles, they never said anything about a wallet, anything. It was the Jacobson guy that was investigating that found out. So it's very weird. Jacobson stated in the CT Insider, Wallet Man had a family member living with him at the time that was suspected in a series of sexual assaults. Okay? Another family member that was also living at the house at that same time was reported to have a van that matched the description of the van seen at Sylvia's apartment complex that she was seen getting into. It's the 80s. I know these vans are popular.
Commonplace?
Yes. Okay, but this is sounding probable cause to at least get some kind of warrant.
I feel that there's a lot of things that could potentially lead to her murderer.
Could just all be coincidental as well. It seems police have a lot to start with right then in 1982. It's 40 years later. Why has no one been charged? But we'll get into it. Why is this an unsolved case? Yeah. Not saying Wallet Guy is the guy, but with eyewitnesses seeing the van and possibly people in it, just seems weird that they never found anything. They've never even named a suspect, never named a person of interest. Literally nothing in her case. Now, to get off of Wallet Guy, another possibility is a serial killer. There were quite a few wreaking havoc in the Connecticut area during this time period. We know that 70s, 80s was ridiculous. There was quite a few specifically in the Connecticut area. A man by the name of Michael M. Sharp, he was charged with kidnapping and then connection with 4 rapes in Connecticut in 1984. Now, you can Google this guy's name, and I'm just going to say he was not well-to-do, but he was like a pinnacle of society in Hartford.
So you're saying he had money?
He had money, had a high job. He was someone high within a school district. This guy, this Michael guy, was not arrested until 2021.
Oh.
In connection to the rapes in 1984. He has a whole bunch of charges of embezzlement. He had a city contract at one point where some people think he wasn't qualified to get this contract. Nutso stuff for the last 30 years. And then suddenly they finally test these rape kits and it points directly to Michael Sharp.
Wow.
And he was a serial rapist in Hartford during 1984. Sylvia was murdered and raped in 1982.
To be devil's advocate here, would you consider that a de-escalation unless Sylvia's murder was an accidental murder when he was trying to rape her? I would consider
strangled her also.
Yeah, but I would consider going from a murder down to, I don't know, is that a de-escalation?
I'm not quite. I don't know if he even did it or if he started before then. The only way they connected him to the 1984 rapes was because of genealogy. That's how they did. Okay. The rape kits were finally completed. Let's pursue it further and go the genealogy route. Okay. So I don't know if he did anything else. It seems very weird. He would do 4 rapes in 1 year and then never do anything before that or after that. He just, I'm going to become a law-abiding citizen and work for the city and schools. It's very weird. So another serial killer that was roaming the area was Michael Bruce Ross. And literally, as I'm reading this, I just connected it. That's 2 serial killers named Michael in the same time frame of terror took at least 8 people's lives and that was from the years of 1981 to 1984, and this was in the New York and Connecticut area. None specifically in the Hartford town. All of his victims were young women. So that's another one. There are others that were roaming this area, and obviously we have ones like Israel Keys that traveled around. But the fact that Sylvia most likely knew her killers is what makes it think that, hey, this is not really a serial killer.
Yeah, it's got to be someone she knew. I don't think she would have just easily gotten into the van.
I agree. I completely agree. There were a few other serial killers, and honestly, none of them need to be named unless we are naming them for the crimes they committed so that the families can get justice. Sylvia Baker's children are now grown adults. They have children of their own, and they've explained to their children that their grandmother died. They haven't explained why or how. However, they will eventually, considering this case has had literally zero attention. I found one other podcast that had covered it. It is on a YouTube video that also includes 5 other people that were murdered in Connecticut. This is a case that needed attention more than anything because more than one person is involved in it. Whoever was in that blue van, if they were her friends, they should have already come forward. But apparently they were not because they've never come forward. Whoever was in that van that she was chatting with was not her friends at the end of the day. I don't know who they were, if they were connected to the religious organization that she became a part of, if they were connected to one of her ex-boyfriends, or if they were connected to a serial killer that she just happened to stumble upon. We don't know who they're connected to because they never came forward. And in my mind, if you don't come forward, you're part of the problem. If anyone has any information about Sylvia Baker's murder, please contact the Unsolved Connecticut Crimes. You can leave an anonymous tip for the cold case unit by calling 1-866-623-8058. The unit can also be reached at email cold.case@ct.gov or just by mail. Write them in a letter. If you need to postmark it from the town across the county, it doesn't matter. Their address is P.O. Box 962, Rocky Hill, Connecticut, and that zip code is 06067. People know about Sylvia's murder. She was a mom. She was a hard worker, a student. She was just trying to provide the best life she could for her children. And she was taken by someone she knew.
Yes.
Like, that is wholeheartedly what I believed. She would not have gotten into that van if she did not know the people. So, if you have any conscience at all, please email us, send us some information to send us in the right direction, and we will get it to the proper authorities because her case could be solved.
I also wonder if they've taken the rope and looked at touch DNA yet.
As of 2021, they are getting more information based on DNA, putting it out there. Genealogy, obviously this other guy that was a serial rapist in the time he's been caught. I would assume they would have tested it against anything that would attach to Sylvia's case. You just never know how long these things take. We know firsthand. DNA takes forever.
Or if the DNA is even viable.
Exactly, that as well. She was found with none of her items. She didn't have anything with her, any of her clothing. All of it was taken. She did not have anything on her but the blindfold and then the 2 things that tied her wrist and ankles together. And
Wow.
I know. It's just, and her mom has been an advocate for so long about her case because she wasn't a perfect victim, which we always talk about. Nobody's a perfect victim. Everyone has their issues. That doesn't negate the fact that you should not have been murdered. She didn't have any risky behaviors. She was just a mom living her life, doing the best she could. I did read a few articles about how there was quite a few murders of women in that area in the 80s, and all up and down a highway.
I also have to question, you said she's not the perfect victim. Again, there is no perfect victim, but had the media had a little bit of coverage in this case, would it have ended differently?
Exactly.
Chances are it
exactly.
would, because more people would have heard about it. More people would have had the opportunity to come forward at the time.
I do not think it ever made any news outside of Hartford. And we have to remember, Hartford, so with 121,000 people now, back in the 80s, I'm sure under 100,000, we're not talking about a huge place, even though it's the capital of Connecticut. This is not a huge place. But the fact that I found maybe 6 articles total from the 1980s that had anything to do with Sylvia, and one of those articles was her mom posting. It wasn't like a true obituary. It was more of, in memory of my daughter, she survived by such and such. And it was like one paragraph.
Oh.
Right, that's it. And there was a few articles, they found her, and then it talked about the cult, which, I mean, honestly, the cult is cult plus religion. I do not believe have anything to do with.
Yeah.
There is nothing that deep, dark, hidden about them that she would find out within a few months, because that's what her family stated. She was only a part of that group for a couple of months, but then she wanted out, or she didn't want to do it anymore, which, okay, great, just don't smoke pot and you're not a part of it. Like,
moving on.
They're not the type that, like, are secrets, so now you have to die.
Yeah.
I could not find any secrets.
And like you said, she was only there for 5 months. Would she have had the opportunity to even get to whatever level of secret, if you want to compare it to things like NXIVM or even Scientology, like where it's, you have to get into these different levels and learn the different things. I'm sure she wasn't initiated in any way into any sort of organizational like you're bound to secrecy in 5 months.
And especially as a very busy mother that's going to school, working 2 jobs, has 2 children, doing it all alone. And she's suddenly supposed to have all this time and that's probably what it was. She probably was just like, I don't have time for a religion right now. I'm trying to get my shit together to raise these children and provide them food. That's all I can say as a mother. Your priorities change once you become a single mother.
We'll share her photo. We will share some information for our listeners to share out, because it's there. It's got to be there to close. They've got to have.
Exactly.
They just need to process some things, it sounds like.
They do have a couple great people working on this case now. They're dedicated. They believe they will solve this. So, you all listening could be the person that solves this case. Gives closure to her children and her grandchildren.
Yes.
I could not imagine being a mother and having to tell my children, your grandmother was murdered and no one ever paid the price for that murder. We can give that to her grandchildren. That is Connecticut.
Wow. Just by listening to our content, you too are advocating for justice for these families. Thank you for making a difference in their lives as well.
We want to share a few ways you can support us to continue our mission. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $1 per month, or a simple rate and review on your favorite podcast platform helps us get in front of someone who may know something.
We will continue traveling state by state seeking justice, because we will be there no matter where,
no matter who.